On the 2nd of March, 2025, a video was posted to Reddit with a single line of text above it. "This has to be the creepiest thing caught on camera that I have ever watched." Within hours, hundreds of thousands of people agreed. The video itself was not new. It had originally aired on a local news show back in 2003. Every November, this particular show invited viewers to submit their most convincing paranormal encounters of the year. They had aired dozens of stories over the years, strange lights, unexplained sounds, figures in windows, but nobody had ever sent in anything quite like this. The footage was submitted by a basketball coach from the Philippines. He had been recording his team during a regular training session, kids running drills, practicing plays, moving constantly across the court. Nothing unusual, just a normal afternoon practice on a court in a newly built area of town, an area so new that almost nobody lived there yet. After training, the coach went home and reviewed the footage as he always did, looking for things to improve, plays to adjust, moments to show the team, and then he saw it. A dark figure, the size and shape of a child, runs across the edge of the frame, fast, silent. There 1 second, gone the next. The coach watched it back, then again, then again. He had never seen that child at practice that day, not once. He called the team together and played them the footage. Their reaction was immediate. Every single one of them was shocked. And then, one by one, they started saying the same thing, that something had felt off that entire afternoon, that at some point during practice, they had all felt a sudden cold breeze pass through them. In the middle of summer, the news show brought in experts to analyze the footage. Their conclusion, the video had not been tampered with in any way. What was on that tape was the raw, unedited recording, exactly as the coach had filmed it. And then Reddit users noticed something else. The figure had no shadow. Every single child on that court cast a clear shadow in the afternoon sun. Every one of them, except the figure cutting across the edge of the frame. It moved through the sunlight and left nothing behind it on the ground. Now, there is a rational explanation for most of this, and it deserves to be said clearly. Human attention is notoriously unreliable in chaotic environments. A group of kids running drills, moving constantly, focused entirely on their coach in that kind of setting. The brain filters out anything it considers irrelevant. A child cutting across the edge of the court, heading somewhere else entirely, would not register as important to anyone focused on the practice. This is a well-documented phenomenon called inattentional blindness. There are famous experiments where people are asked to track a basketball being passed between players and completely miss a person in a full gorilla suit walking through the middle of the scene. That almost certainly explains why the coach never noticed the figure in real time, but spotted it immediately on playback. As for the missing shadow, the footage is grainy, filmed at an angle, and the figure is narrow relative to the position of the sun. Any shadow would be faint at best, and if you slow the footage down frame by frame, traces of a shadow do appear, briefly, just not consistently enough to be obvious at full speed. So there is a rational explanation, but here is where it gets complicated. One Reddit user who commented on the original post added a detail that nobody had considered. They wrote, "This is from the Philippines. I remember seeing this when it aired. The whole point was that the area was newly built. Nobody really lived there. They had no idea where the child came from or where he was going, and black children are not common in the Philippines. So, if the rational explanation is simply a child cutting through the court, who was that child? Where did he come from? Where was he going? In a newly built area with almost no residents. Why was a child alone on the edge of that court in the middle of the afternoon? Why did nobody see him arrive? Why did nobody see him leave? Why did 16 children and a coach all feel a cold breeze pass through them at some point during that exact practice? Maybe there is a perfectly ordinary explanation that was simply never documented. A child from somewhere nearby, a coincidence of timing and location, a shadow lost in grainy footage and bad angles. Maybe, but without more footage, without more testimony, without knowing anything about who that child was or where he came from, we will never truly know what was on that court with them that day. The disturbing video of Elisa Lam. On the 31st of January, 2013, a surveillance video from inside an elevator at the Cecil Hotel in Los Angeles began circulating online. At first, it looks completely ordinary. A young woman steps inside. She presses multiple buttons, then suddenly moves back into the corner. The doors don't close. She leans forward, looks into the hallway, then pulls back, fast, again and again, as if someone is standing just outside the frame, but there is nobody there. Then Then her behavior changes completely, erratic, unpredictable. She steps out into the empty hallway and begins gesturing, her hands moving like she is reacting to something only she can see. No one enters the frame, no shadow, no reflection, nothing. After a few moments, she walks back inside. The doors finally close. That woman was Elisa Lam, and that elevator was the last place she was ever seen alive. Elisa was 21 years old, a Canadian student from Vancouver traveling alone down the west coast of America. She called her parents back home every single day without fail. On the 26th of January, 2013, she checked into the Cecil Hotel in downtown Los Angeles. Within 2 days of checking in, her roommates filed a complaint with hotel management about her odd behavior. She was leaving notes telling them to go away, locking the door and demanding a password to get in. She was moved to a private room. Then on the 31st of January, the daily phone call to her parents never came. Officers arrived at her room and found everything still inside. Her laptop, her wallet, her ID, her medication, everything except Elisa. Weeks later, on the 19th of February, hotel guests began complaining. Low water pressure, discolored taps, water with a strange taste nobody could explain. A maintenance worker climbed a 10-foot ladder to inspect the rooftop water tanks, moved a 20-pound metal lid aside, and found Elisa Lam floating face up inside. She was naked. Her clothing was found in the tank beside her. There were no signs of physical trauma, no evidence of a struggle, no alcohol, no illegal substances in her system. But to get there, she would have had to access a locked rooftop door fitted with an alarm reported to be working. No alarm had been triggered. Then she would have had to climb that ladder, lift that heavy lid, and get inside, alone, in the dark. Investigators confirmed Elisa had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder. The medication prescribed to manage her condition was still in her hotel room, untouched. The official ruling was accidental drowning, with her bipolar disorder listed as a significant contributing factor. On paper, the explanation is clear, but the video is what people keep coming back to, because it doesn't show what happened. It shows what she was reacting to: an empty hallway, no one visible, no shadow, no reflection, and yet clear, deliberate reactions to something just outside that frame that no camera ever captured. Maybe it was a mind under stress, a perception distorted by illness, a moment of confusion that led to a tragic end. Maybe, but without knowing what she saw, that footage becomes something else entirely. A moment where something feels present, even when nothing is there. And once you have seen it, it is very hard to look at that empty hallway and feel certain that it actually was. Which in Saudi Arabia, in May of 2016, a post appeared on the Reddit forum r Solved Mysteries with a single question above a video attachment. What the actual heck is this video? The person who posted it had very little information to share, just that the footage had been filmed somewhere in Saudi Arabia, and that whatever was caught on camera that night, they could not explain it. The video was recorded by a police officer. He was driving alone down a remote desert road in the middle of the night, somewhere in the region of Tabuk, in northern Saudi Arabia. Darkness on every side, nothing but flat, empty desert stretching out beyond his headlights. And then, in the middle of that road, he saw her, a woman, dressed entirely in white, standing completely still in the pitch-black desert, miles from anywhere, miles from anyone, at an hour when there was absolutely no reason for a person to be standing alone in the middle of a road in the Saudi desert. The officer kept his camera rolling, and what the footage captured next is what made millions of people stop scrolling. The woman began to move, but not the way a person normally moves. Her movements were wrong, strange, disjointed, her body shifting and swaying in a way that felt deeply unnatural. The officer's voice in the background begins to shake. He is audibly frightened, and this detail alone is what made the Reddit post go viral. Because this was not a nervous civilian, this was a trained police officer, someone accustomed to danger, someone who had likely faced threatening situations before, and yet the genuine fear in his voice as he filmed that figure in the darkness was impossible to fake. In Saudi Arabia, The reaction of that officer makes complete sense in context, because in Saudi culture and Islamic belief, witchcraft is not a myth or a fairy tale. It is a real and deeply serious matter. As stated in the Quran, witchcraft is considered a major sin, a harmful practice taught by devils, something genuinely feared and genuinely believed to cause damage to those it is directed at. Saudi Arabia has an entire dedicated unit within its law enforcement, the Anti-Witchcraft Unit, specifically formed to investigate and prosecute cases involving black magic and sorcery. So when that officer saw a woman moving in an unnatural way alone in a remote desert at midnight, his fear was not irrational. He was not afraid of a person. He was afraid of something he had no way to fight. But then, a Reddit user added a comment that changed how many people saw the footage entirely. They wrote, "There are Bedouin communities that live out in the desert. The idea that a mentally ill Bedouin woman somehow wandered away from her tent is completely plausible. I lived in Tabuk during my childhood. That is exactly where this video was claimed to be filmed." And with that one comment, the footage began to look very different. Bedouin communities have inhabited the remote desert regions of Saudi Arabia for thousands of years. Their traditional way of life involves living in tents and temporary settlements spread across vast stretches of isolated desert. Women in these communities typically wear long white or light-colored robes, which closely match the clothing of the figure seen in the video. And then there is the behavior itself. The movements that appeared so unnatural, so wrong, so difficult to explain, also align closely with documented symptoms of certain untreated mental health conditions, severe psychotic disorders, neurological conditions, trauma-related illness. These conditions can cause profound disorientation, involuntary and repetitive movements, a complete loss of awareness of surroundings or danger. In isolated desert communities where consistent access to mental health care can be extremely limited, someone suffering from these conditions could wander miles from their tent in the dark without ever realizing it. So what was caught on that road in Tabuk in the middle of the night? A witch performing dark rituals in the Saudi desert? Or a deeply unwell woman who had wandered far from home, alone, with no idea where she was or what was happening around her? Nobody ever followed up. No identification was ever made. No name was ever given to the woman in white. The officer never confirmed what happened after the camera stopped rolling, and the footage itself has never been definitively proven to be either genuine or staged. Without more footage, without testimony, without knowing who that woman was or where she came from, the truth remains exactly where it has always been, somewhere out there in the dark, where the headlights end